Jordal woke to a warm bed chamber and cool sweat on naked skin, scent of fresh sex dampening the bedsheet. But arid desert air scratched irritably at his nostrils, thus souring an otherwise splendid morn. Years had passed since he left his native island home, but he never forgot the cool, salty winds that carried the teasing citric aromas. After this mission, he desired to return to his coastal origins, buy a beachfront house and watch the sunrise every morning in warm magnificence. He would postpone future missions until his body had shriveled from extended exposure to the salty mist, assuming there would be future missions. But that thought was immediately pushed from his forethoughts with well-trained automation. Not an instinct of denial, but of survival. During the night, vaguely, he had recalled pushing the blanket from his body. Oftentimes after bedding a woman, a gentle slumber would roll over him, and always to the murmuring of lapping waves on distant shores. Never had he forced a woman into his bed, and never had a woman left his bed unfulfilled. Not a sentiment of conceit, but of simple observation. And for the man of eyes, observation was key. Though his skill with regard to social engineering and uncanny charisma always proved miraculous, he could easily admit his natural affinities were not impressive in comparison to Sierra's empathetic soul-searing, or Felix's unsurpassed ethereal sight into the Akashic plane. With a flex of his agile body, Jordal rose from the bed only to fall to his toes and knuckles for a quick morning routine of push-ups. The memories of the last woman he had bed stirred his nether regions. The delightful starring role of his mind's show went to the beautiful informant by the name of Janelle of Paris, a frail and tall but taut woman who could move like a silver fox and dance like a gypsy, with a pearly smile that could part seas. She oftentimes spoke in lovers' tongues. Janelle Sinclair proved an instrumental asset to Jordal, Ryder, Milas, and Sierra. She had led them to the den of Spectre Signor de Besacu, Wraith Lords of Besacu, a necromantic cult operating deep within the criminal underworld of Paris. A night of paranormal assassinations had ended with a transcendence of Kama Sutra sex. Though Janelle was of common blood, she possessed unworldly talents in the way of mind-blowing eroticism. Significantly distracted by the memory of her hands, her mouth, and that finest French pussy, Jordal discontinued push-ups and sat back on his haunches. He needed to focus, stay on task, because reminiscing about beautiful women was moot compared to the ominous precipice facing he and the other Aconite warriors. A slight shift of events and all would topple into oblivion. Bioweapons, necromantic cults, apocalyptic weather disasters, rampant outbreaks of third world narcissism, nuclear mishaps, countless rogue mage havens, and the everlasting threat of global terrorism. The Aconites had faced it all. Oftentimes, the nameless saviors of the day, their feats and achievements distributed among the high rollers in the UN. For the first time since Jordal had joined this elite band of warriors, his confidence in their triumph wavered. He spread his arms in an angelic manner, the tips of his fingers stretched. Stiff muscles popped. A gentle crane of his neck prompted a crack. Breathe in. Breathe out. Controlled. slow. For days now, the revered prophecies of Orthopaldi had been the centerpiece for conversation upon tables of paladin factions worldwide. The prophecy. The twins. The only hope for all life on all worlds and planes of existence. And all prophesied by an aging elder nearing 102 years of age. An ancient who struggled with blatant dementia, oftentimes forgetting what he'd prophesied, or forgetting he was a prophet altogether. Albeit, most of his predictions had come in vivid visions when he was a youth of 8. Contemporary skeptics suggested that the young Ortho's so-called visions were boyhood flights of fancy. But people needed something to believe in. This world lacked logic. Although Jordal knew this sentiment well, the events attesting to this fact never ceased to surprise him. The beast was here. The prophecy was coming to pass. Or was it? The earlier 12th century prophecies of Ostrachild Goiswinth had spoken in sparse detail of the beast returning and finding its mate, and the act of fusing with her, a process of melding their souls forevermore. The first fusing had occurred during the time of the kingdom of Sodom. The beast had descended upon the holiest ziggurat of the city, Gardonian and Capilius. Jordal had come across the name in one of Goiswinth's earlier Lottian to Greek translations. It was the name of the beast who had descended upon Sodom. The sole survivor of that ordeal had been the man named Lot, and it was Lot who had offered his home and food to the visiting angels, and the one who was spared from that fate-bound city. Fortunately, the events of Sodom and Lot's tell-all confessional, better known as Lot's Gospel, offered some knowledge of this mating and what was to be expected. Most notably, carnal sexual debauchery. The female Geminus, what Goiswinth referred to as the vixen, would go into heat soon after the fusing, and from her newfound body would pour forth 1 billion perfumes that would incite bird, bee, lion, bear, and man, and woman, into depraved orgies of flesh. The streets would run free with the virgin blood of maidens and men. Masses of people will cry unnatural tears of blood. With a few moons, the people will stray and the city will fall into ruin. And all because of some alien pheromone. One creature's evolution is another's extinction. How gloriously tragic the universe could be. Its own gallows humor, he supposed, to make the stars and heavens laugh. But then, in the early 20th century, came a pudgy-faced child prophet Orthopalpi, who proclaimed his convictions upon the shoulders of Goiswinth, that there would not only be a return of the beast to this world, but that there would be twins to champion the new world against their return. Often Goiswinth's prophecies were collectively known as the laws of the unlawful beast, while Orthos were collectively and more modestly known as the twin prophecy. Together, they laid out rudimentary battle plans for these coming visions. And they will be born under the stars aligned for them. And the alignment shall be known as the sign of champions. Beneath the sign of champions shall be the hour when our saviors are born. 2 shall be birthed. The twins, the twin warriors to save us all. In a distant past, for Sodom, they had not foreseen the fusing before the beast's descent. In these contemporary times, does this knowledge of their mating help or hinder the endeavor for victory? If they kill the beast's mate, the vixen, they kill the beast. Now that they were fused, only one of the beasts would need to die, and the stag, by Jordal's own inferences, seemed the weaker of the two.
We kill him, the stag, and this ends. Cannot be that simple.
Ortho was so certain that the twin warriors were the only ones meant to defeat the beast, that he had paladin factions worldwide following in suit. This was the way. This was the only way. Rorn and Atticus had both been taken from undisclosed locales and factions to be relocated and raised in secrecy until only a few years ago. But now, one of those Ortho prophesied twins was dead. That changed everything. Or did it? Two beasts would surely be more difficult to slay. Maybe even one unfused male, a Goyswinth stag, would have been easier to slay than a fused one? Does their fusing increase their strength or ability to tap into Arcanium? A source that Goyswinth commonly referred to as Deninian Etheros? Was Ortho right in that only the twin warriors could defeat the beast? Some say yes. Some say no. Some bury their heads between their knees and choose to live in ignorance. Worse yet, some choose to blindly follow the next self-proclaimed prophet. And what to believe with regard to the twin warriors? One twin was now dead. The other hid in shadows, fleeing from the pursuit of a world and a people who could not fathom what was at stake. The duality had been shattered, a phrase coined by Prefect Caldric, echoed most poignantly.
And what are we to offer this battle, Commander?
He'd asked of General Guntram Daggard days ago when first receiving the orders.
We go. We do our job.
Although the general spoke with conviction, Jordal sensed a sliver of apprehension. No wonder the heated memories of the previous night's passions kept pressing into his consciousness, pushing aside the direful events surely to come with this ominous day. The day the High Templars vote whether or not to send he and his warrior brothers to, what many are saying, a certain death. Nora, sweet Nora. The girl had been a genuinely wonderful distraction to soothe the mind and body after a long travel and weary night. But she was just that, a distraction. Though her wild-eyed dreams of finding the circle of the Ark and becoming an adept assassin were precious, they were also a reminder of her naivete. Silly girl. And to think the girl named Nora would acquire the knowledge to find the Ark, a faction known for their skills of secrecy. The only faction the United Paladin Council turned to when seeking the concealment of certain documents and artifacts. He may have sent her south to find the barn, but finding the needle among the straw on the floor of that barn would prove most daunting. Especially seeing that the barn is not a barn at all, but an igloo, and in the north. Jordal pulled on his clothes, skin-tight latex jeans that made no noise and a form-fitting sleeveless shirt. His gaze swept to the throwing star on the bedside table. Ward, he'd called it. He never threw Ward, keeping it safe to his person, as it was his lucky star. He fingered his inner groin, the scabs where Ward had bit into his skin, then eyed the star quizzically. He smiled. Lastly, before departing, he slid on tea-shaded glasses. With his roaming gaze concealed behind dark lenses, the man of eyes could observe all and do so discreetly. Time for some recon. "5 a.m. Soon the reverberating boom of the bell was replaced by the clanging of blacksmiths. The bell served as an alarm, prompting most sleepy-eyed children from their comfy beds, and the bakery was open and ready to serve breakfast to these waking Abelites. Jordal walked the pathways, weaving in and around the stone and adobe buildings that dotted the compound. A stroll through a summertime town of old. By now the sun had risen, and the people had awoken to busy themselves with their day-to-day lives. An opportune time for observation. Drunk with mediocrity, distracted by routine, forced smiles were forgotten. Some even spoke aloud, ignorant to Jordal's presence. A path of red stone swept to the left and led to the stoop of a weathered stone building. The perfume of baked breads and pastries billowed from behind drapes of an open window. Jordal's mouth salivated. A female child pranced clumsy steps to and fro before windmilling about the open doorway of the bakery house. A pale blue dress, splotched with berry and lemon icing, swished and swayed with every joyful twist and turn. Intently, Jordal watched. And watched. Until he caught the girl with a pointed but questioning look. The girls here, maidens, in their pretty girly dresses and pretty girly faces, were most entertaining. It might just give Miranda an aneurysm. With one of the twins deceased and one in jail, unlikely the High Council would deny the Paladins their Hail Mary. Or Hail Lot, in this case, for the Aconites to save the world. At the knock of the gavel and final decree from High Templars and Geoffrey Staymore himself, he and the rest of the Aconite team would be saluted, praised, and cheered back to the Black Dagger. And then it was off to Buckeye, Texas, to save the world. Ground zero for the Holy Wars. Cosmic Showdown, Armageddon, the Rapture, or whatever the people had come to know it as. Because the Aconites were so many, 13 counting Commander Guntram, they were too large a group to be teleported in the same fashion that the High Elders had done with Atticus. Luckily, Jordal thought with a smirk, they had Master Archmage Victor Falstein in their ranks. He couldn't teleport them in the blink of an eye, but he had other enchantments for expediting their journey to Texas. Not entirely within the boundaries of local law, but highway violations were the least of concerns. A torchbearer approached and offered Jordal a clay plate with a candle balanced in its center. Jordal shook his head. The gentleman nodded before staggering toward a wooden work table. He set the candle down and sat upon a stone bench. Behind the torchbearer was a burly man busying himself with the lighting of the forge and the scattering of hammers, tongs, chisels, and more. Jordal watched and observed. The clattering of dueling swords grew louder, and from various locations and distances. The greatest of the structures, the Tower of Tribulation, rose from the center of the compound. In a 12th century European milieu, the tower would have possessed a threatening and impressive sentinel to any would-be invaders. But in the middle of this New Mexico desert, behind crude adobe brick walls, the column of burnt stone was more serene than threatening, and more forgettable than impressive. A melodramatic, anachronistic flair conveying historic excessiveness and conceit. Rich, he thought with some admonishment, considering he himself had hailed from the belly of a galley ship circa 1300s. Ships built with practicality. No detectable electronic equipment. No engines requiring refueling. Handcrafted canvas sails designed for greater propulsion, weather permitting, of course. Control lies within the sailor, not the technology. Technology built by men. Men motivated by the pursuit of wealth and self-importance. True, Mother Nature with her windless days and stormy nights could be troubling. But, and yet, much more agreeable than metallic faulty equipment. Susceptible to the salt and moisture of the wind and ocean. Sails work alongside Mother Nature, partnering with the air and water, as opposed to engines with their sole purpose to fight against these same elements. Every member of the Ark was required to know how to sail, navigate, and conduct waterfront warfare.
To fend off all the krakens that dwell beneath us, Captain?
Jordal recalled his younger self asking with a wide smirk. Jordal stood in the inky shadow of the largest tower in the compound. It was his understanding that all manner of training from physical to mental to arcane and academics took place within the multiple levels of the tower. If memory served, the great Arcanium Hall was located on the 3rd level. Most likely at this moment, Minor Mage Gange Lee and Master Archmage Victor Fallstein were frequenting this chamber. According to Archmage Victor, the Order of Abel kept in their possession rare tomes concerning cosmic star magic, natural belief systems, and the connections between man and the heavens above. Abelites trusted in magic and faith, whereby Archons preferred to rely on preparation and knowledge. Know the enemy. Prepare for the enemy. So when the battle begins, warriors can live in the moment, keeping their mind focused and clear from hindrance spawned by doubt and stupidity. Long ago, the world was destroyed by water, salvaging the bloodline that would serve as the foundation for the circle of the Ark, a fact muddied with an elixir of bitter and sweet. Water was the past. Fire is the future. The common hall in the Eagle building was where Jordal was to rendezvous with General Guntram. Jordal continued along the pathway, away from the Tower of Tribulation and toward the common room. Jordal listened, observed, walked, listened. Hushed voices resounded from everywhere and nowhere, while Abelites clamored about. Young and old, men and women, boys and girls, bushy-eyed children sprinted in various but deliberate directions, the wonder of a new day aglow and obvious as the curve of their smiles and the melody of their giggles. Caretakers, parents, and elders had not burdened these innocent hearts and minds with the portents of doom and gloom, a certainty rearing just over the horizon. Perhaps the reason the children were not burdened by despair was because they themselves, caretakers, parents, and elders, also showed no sign of torment or worry. Many busied themselves with yoking farm animals to wood and iron equipment, unloading crates and barrels from wagons, while some adjusted the belts and drawstrings of their leather armor, oiled sandy trumpets and horns, while others prepared kilns and kindled stovetops. Women draped laundry over taut twine, scrubbed pots in clay basins, and still others carried baskets full of warm breads and pastries, serving them to all they passed by, including the laundry and kitchen maidens. Jordal feigned interest in a street cart offering juice, milk, and coffee, but kept his focus on a nearby plump boy who stood in the threshold of a small cottage. The boy showed no interest in joining the other children in restless play, but instead waited for his mother. She strolled toward the house carrying a basket under one arm. Inside was doughy mini cakes, smothered in honey and butter. The boy hurried to meet his mother. Older boys donned in leathers, chainmail, helms, high boots, carrying swords, bows and arrows, crossbows, spears, and pikes sprinted along the dirt-paved streets. A two-horse-drawn wagon rounded the corner. The driver's bald head reflected the sunlight, while the long white beard concealed the lower portion of his face. The wagon slowed to a stop. The elderly driver climbed down. He leaned against the wagon, gently gliding the palm of his frail hand down the horse's back. The man regarded Jordal with little enthusiasm. Jordal neared the wagon, and with curiosity, he subtly regarded the load, a dozen oak barrels with tarnished metal bands,
Ain't a thing in there for you.
Jordal cut a glance at the man.
Simple curiosity, old friend.
Don't know why you people are here. We do mighty fine all on our own, you hear?
I apologize for offenses of mine and my fellow companions, but I would like to point out to the old man before me that it was your very own prefect who summoned us here.
Don't matter who called you here. We don't need you. Y'all ain't supposed to be here. Y'all know that. Y'all know that right as right. Yeah, y'all come here.
Forgive me. What of our presence here scorns you?
You ain't no dumb mule, fella. I ain't either. So don't go trying to be all coy, 'cause I can spot a fox in a hen suit. That you better believe, fella.
The twins? And the prophecies, is it, sir?
Yep, now there. Sharp tool right there. Don't go prancing around here like you don't know it either. Y'all ought to be smart enough to know y'all ain't thought so kindly by us here. But I'm a-reckoning that the prefect got his bootlickers and y'all here to just add more spit to the polishing of them boots. That's what I tell you, son, and you know it.
Jordal raked a hand through the horse's sweat-laced mane, while the elderly man tugged a mud-colored rag from his overalls, using the rag to mop at his brow.
What is the name of these majestic animals?
Horses. What you think we call them?
You don't give them distinct names?
I reckon you could call this one First Lead, and that one the other one, if you need it to be something fancy.
And what of you? Or do I just call you Old Man?
Jasper. Jasper Mayhatter. I got work to do, fella.
Jordal.
I am Jordal Weskadan. Perplexed, the old man blinked several times as if getting dust from his lids.
Well, all right, Jordal Weskadan. As I said, I got work to do.
Then I will help you, Jasper Mayhatter.
I pray the offering of my labor does not offend.
Jordal reached to heft one of the barrels.
Take it over there, next to Morgana's house. Right over there and sit it down by the door on the left. Make sure it's the left and not the right.
We serve truth, not men.
Eh?
We serve truth, not men.
I tell you, fella, Jordal, I don't know what you're getting at.
Jordal lowered his head, hiding a smile.
It's a mantra we Aconites like to say.
We serve truth, not men. Me nor my companions are here as agents of Prefect Warren Caldric or any other man.
Not even the elders of the High Council?
Not even.
Been seeing lots of them elders lately. Ever since Atticus departed to Texas. You know, them High Councilmen got all together in the Coliseum over yonder and worked up some mighty powerful magic that transported Atticus right on over to that Texas town. Bug-Eye, I tell you. I think that's the name of it.
Buckeye. Jasper cut Jordal a stern glance. Then a dry, thin smile cracked his lips above his bushy white beard.
Well, I'll be a nanny snake. Here I've been calling it Bug-Eye all this time, and ain't nobody around here told me a lick of difference. Reckoning they might think it's Bug-Eye too, huh?
I did hear of the teleportation feat the High Council conducted for Selector Atticus's journey to Buckeye. That must have been a glorious sight to behold.
Might have been. I don't know myself. Was out cold as a drunk when they did it. Heard about it the next day, though. Heard Caldric got his breeches in a twist about it, too. That's what I heard. Granton, one of them junior cadets, he told me. He helps me out when I go down to the quarry for rocks. He told me he was there, and he saw Caldric get mighty upset with Atticus and Raiden.
Raiden Kai, I presume?
That's him. Ain't but one Raiden Kai, mind you. That's about as much as these walls can take, fella. One more Raiden Kai and the whole place would come crumbling down. He's a dying breed, all right, I tell you that. But I reckon sometimes he needs to get on with the dying. Fella like him, Jerdale. They take to pissing on anthills too often until everybody starts getting bit. From what I heard myself, he's already got a bunch of ants up his pants on account of what he's been hollering.
And what is it that Raiden Kai hollers of?
What ain't the old drunk hollering about? Things he goes off spouting just minds me of why I don't nip from the flask no more. But I tell you, he ain't been too concerned over Roran's death. Ain't got no qualms about denouncing Roran as one of the twins, for the poor boy's eyes even lolled off into the back of his skull. Some took to thinking that Raiden had something to do with Roran's death. Might have pushed him from the tower with magic. He's fond of blowing hot air in more ways than one.
A sardonic smile. Jordal nodded, gesturing for the elderly man to continue. Jasper spat and wiped his mouth.
What's coming from the grapevine is that Caldric is sending Raiden packing, excommunicating him.
On what grounds?
You might get me lying, I tell you, but what the grapevine is saying is that Raiden is still backing his boy Atticus, and fella, some are accusing him of consorting with the devil.
Jasper leaned closer, sweet tobacco fuming from his breath.
At the very least, with some devilish entity that Raiden calls the Dark Trinity.
This does mark the elder with questionable faculties. What do you know of this devil, the one Raiden calls the Dark Trinity?
Things like that best not to know about. I tell you that right is right twice over.
You can tell me nothing? I picked you, Jasper Mayhatter, as a man of great connection to that proverbial grapevine. The man licked brown spittle from his cracked lips.
Kai confessed right before us God and the mules that he'd gotten knowledge from the Dark Devil. Right over there. Came down from the lift over yonder with Atticus in tow. And that's where he went to raving and lifting his staff. Carried on like a monkey with a snake bite.
And this is why he is being exiled from the Order?
Caldric's saying Raiden is backing a lame pony on race day with Atticus. He didn't say it so like that, I tell you. But with that sort of thinking, Raiden ain't qualified for his rank no more is what I hear the prefect a-claiming. Don't nobody talk about that other mess much. That devil Trinity.
At the top of the Tower of Tribulation, a wrought iron cage began lowering. And you, and the people like you, Jasper, what is it you all believe is to come now, with the loss of Roran and this news of Atticus's arrest?
I've been here at the Order for over 57 years. My pappy, Lorgan Mayhatter, helped lay some of the very first stones that make up the foundation that tower is standing on.
Jasper turned now to face in the Tower of Tribulation, with a gleam of pride and respect in his aged face.
Before that, he and his pappy, let me see, that'd be my great-pappy Amos Mayhatter, and they had both come back from the Order of Abel back when it was still up in Boston. And the whole lot of us, my papa and his pappy, and I'm sure his pappy before him, great-great-pappy Hugo Mayhatter, and me, we all heard about the prophecy since we was flea high, back before Ortho Palpy first took to scrawling down his predictions. There had been Ostrachild Goiswinth with his Brevity Divinitate Saculorum prophecies. What a lot of people know is the writ of the centuries in layman's common tongue. And in the Oates Diary from the 1780s, not at all thorough, mind you, and reeking of something not all too right. But a many of them entries did speak of a winged priestess and a whore of a billion moons. Pardon my French, fella, just how it's written down as I recall. Orthos Palpy talked about the winged whore too when he was 8 years old. Probably him and my pappy might have been schoolyard chums. And it's likely it's Ortho's story is what my mama told me when my lips still wet with the milk of her teat. Of the great coming of the twins and the mighty battle against the beast that laid waste to Sodom. Prophets from Goiswinth to Palpy had been saying it would all come again, that the great beast would return, but that this time there would be the twins born under the sign of the champions, when the stars and the planets line up just right as Rye on Sunday, and that they'd be the ones to kill the beast.
But one of those twins, Roran, took his life. Does this tragedy not prompt Jasper to question the beliefs of the ancient scholars?
Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But all I know is that I'm too damn old to change my ways. I can tell you that right as white twice a day. Ain't enough soles in my boots to start thinking about new stitchings. And me, fella, when it's all chewed, spat, and swallowed, you too, fella, we just simple-minded little critters on a big old flying rock. And I reckon what we believe in or don't believe in, it ain't gonna make a pebble of difference.
The iron cage reached the bottom. The grilled door opened, and a paladin in green leather exited.
Thank you, Jasper Mayhatter. I have enjoyed our conversation.
Jordal extended his hand. Jasper looked it over, smiled wryly. Then he shook Jordal's hand.
Mighty fine conversation, Jordale. Might fine, I tell you that. But it don't change my mind none, fella. Y'all ain't supposed to be here, and that's what I know as plain as day.
Jasper Mayhatter, the old man of steadfast convictions. I know now who to speak to when I need truths unfiltered.